Bridging Gaps, the business podcast with Deborah Levitt, sharing the challenges and stories of fellow business owners. Today's guest is Jo Ferrone. Jo is founder of How Does She Do It, which is an online community in Facebook and face-to-face networking in Surrey. She's looking at how she can bring more people together and how she can support businesswomen to find friendship, support, and collaborations. Welcome, Jo. Hi, Jo. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you, Deborah. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's really lovely to have you. So, Jo, at this point, if I'm not mistaken, you've got a couple of things that you're running with. So one is Wrapped Up Admin, and the other thing, which I think has kind of claimed your heart, is How Does She Do It?
Absolutely. Yeah. Juggling a couple of things, but loving the variety that they bring right now.
So do you want to just explain a little bit about what the two businesses are?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Wrapped Up Admin is a business that I started about 3 years ago now, and it is supporting small business owners with all of the back office tasks that they haven't perhaps got time to do, perhaps they don't know how to do, or very honestly, they just don't want to do, which is absolutely fair enough. So I'm very privileged to work with a variety of small business owners. Interestingly, about 90% of them are women, and I get to enjoy learning all about these different businesses all the time, which is just fabulous. So that's Wrapped Up. And How Does She Do It is something that was born at the side, on the edge of Wrapped Up, when I was loving the work, loving my clients, and was doing really, really well, but realized that there was something that wasn't quite right, and that was actually the isolation that I felt I was experiencing whilst working for myself. So I set up How Does She Do It? It's a Facebook community, just a group, and it's become a place. It was a place I set up for myself to support others, but in all honesty, it was to support me, to be able to speak with other people that were in the same position as me. So yeah, it's grown and grown, which is lovely.
And whereabouts are you planning on taking it? I know you've got some plans for what's happening, which by the time we release this will already have taken place.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are some announcements coming in the coming weeks and months, which I'm really, really excited about. I've always been someone that has been very happy to be backstage, if you like, beavering away in the background, supporting people in various different roles that I've had. But now I feel that I've been through an awful lot, and I'm blessed to be meeting so many amazing, inspiring business owners that I want to take it a step further. And I actually want to start getting my voice heard, getting my face seen, and just being a little bit bolder and getting people to really start talking honestly with each other and sharing and supporting each other. So yeah, I have events. I have more networking events planned and workshops as well. So yeah, it's really, really exciting.
And one of the things you mentioned was the sense of isolation that led you to set up the group in the first instance. I think that's something that a lot of business owners, when they start out, they don't expect. They've assumed, especially if they've come from a corporate background, they kind of assume that there will be people around them, and that they're a little bit shocked almost by the isolation or the loneliness, and don't necessarily know how to deal with it. Have you found that to be the case with the people who are joining How Does She Do It, or those sorts of experiences?
Absolutely. And I think it's less that they're not expecting it, and it's more that they, and myself included, are focusing on the positives of working for yourself, the flexibility, particularly if you've got a family and you want to be there for your children, whether that's going to school assemblies or whether it's doing the school run, or just generally being there as a parent. So I think we're very correctly focusing on the flexibility and the positives of it, that we almost just don't think about the potential that there could be negatives. And again, I think this is something that people are not necessarily speaking about either. And I think with social media these days, we are very good at looking from the inside out and perceiving other people to be coping with everything brilliantly and have everything just so. And we compare everyone else's front of house with our backstage. And so that's not an even comparison. So I think it runs quite deep. And I think that we've got to be very, very wary of our mental health in these modern times.
And obviously that's a recurring theme, very publicly these days as well. And I think it is incredibly valuable to be speaking about it and to be bringing awareness to it. And something that I know you did the other day in the group was you basically did, I think it was a Facebook Live, and said, look, life's been tough, things have slipped, and I just wanted to let you know. And I think that was really great because it was that really honest, and I'm telling you that there's been a problem rather than just trying to deal with it. And I just wondered how that felt to you to actually just come out and tell. You've got quite a large group there. How did that feel, and how did people respond?
It felt right. I didn't actually feel nervous, which I surprised myself that I didn't feel nervous. I want to lead by example. I don't think you can be truly authentic if you're telling people what they should do, but you're not necessarily doing it yourself. And I believe that even though I know my backstage and I know the juggle that I'm going through and the hard times that I've been through, actually, if I were to look at the threads in the How Does She Do It group, maybe they're all very upbeat and very positive and looking like I have got everything under control. So I'm trying to find that balance. I want to be upbeat and positive because I want to radiate that energy to my members. But at the same time, I don't want them having that perception that everything's perfect in Joe Ferrone's world. And therefore, that's not going to help them in any way. So in terms of what the reaction was, it was incredible. It blew me away. People were so heartfelt and supportive and confessional to a point as well. They not only respected the fact that I'd shared it, but it gave many of them a boost to share how they were perhaps feeling as well. And that just made my heart sing. It's really valuable.
And do you think that having those conversations and just opening up the conversation is all that's needed? Is that enough to get people saying, oh yeah, the world isn't all perfect? Or do you think that there are other steps that we need to take as well to, I guess, to build on that, whether it's to give ourselves the tools to deal with those rough things, or, whatever it might be?
That's a really good point. I think that there is more that can be done. But at the moment, I don't think there's very much being done on that base level, like I have tried to do myself. I mean, it's only me, it's just me. So I'm not some big corporation, I'm not some big collaborative group at the moment. It is just me. So I'm just doing what I feel is right at the moment. As How Does She Do It grows, yes, I feel there's more that I can put in place to support people. And I have got some ideas which I really, really think are going to help people just really value what they're doing, their worth, and how successful they are, even if at one moment in time they feel like they're just trying to make their way up a one-way street in the wrong direction. So yeah, I definitely think we can build on it.
And do you think, I guess looking back at your personal experience again, when you started Wrapped Up Admin, I know that you were working in a corporate, you left to have your first child, and then wanted to do a little bit more to just, utilize your skills and your brain and all of those things, as well as being, a great mother. Have you found that through those transitions that you've had doubts, self-doubts, worries about what you're doing? And how have you coped with those?
Wow, that's a really good question. Really good question. I've had to overcome quite a lot. Um, and I have come to learn in the last 3 years since running Wrapped Up that actually the only way you can improve and grow is by absolutely pushing out of your comfort zone to the point where it does feel very uncomfortable. And yes, I felt really nervous about how my ideas might be received. When I ran my first networking event, I worked my socks off to let people know about it, but I didn't know that people were going to come. And so all these things that I've been doing, I've just been gradually expanding my comfort zone, I suppose. And I just love stepping out of it now. It's actually become a hobby.
And how does it feel to be, I guess, taking the next step with how does she do it? How does that feel as a, as you said, it's putting yourself out there instead of being the person behind the scenes?
Yeah, it feels, I would say I feel equal excitement and absolute nerves. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I feel the nerves because I really care about it, and I feel the excitement because I feel I can make a difference. And my attitude these days, and it has not always been like this, is it's better to try something and fall flat on your face and then just pick yourself up and learn from it than to hesitate and not try something. So I'm putting myself out there, and it might not take off as I imagine it in my head, but how I'll grow through just having this experience of trying is it can't be, I don't think you can replace anything with that. I will grow as a person, as a business person, and yeah, that helps everything.
And I think you do, we all do learn so much just through those experiences. And whether they've worked out or not, that there's always positive things to take from them, even if there is, don't do that again. So there's always, something to learn. But have you been in the situation, you said on some of those that you've learned, that you just need, if you fail, that you pick yourself up and go again. Are there points where you felt that picking yourself up and keeping going actually isn't possible, and that you've had to fight through to get yourself turned around?
Very much so. And funnily enough, some of the hardest times were before I was juggling a business and a family. I yeah, I feel like I hit rock bottom shortly, well, in the time before I started Wrapped Up Admin, and I suffered quite badly with both pregnancies. I wasn't very well at all, and life changed very quickly for me, and I had to step away from life for a while. So I've had a lot of struggles, and I feel that actually what I'm doing now is something that I'd have never had the opportunity to do back then. And I felt I did well in the corporate world, and I was very proud of my growth and everything I achieved. And I wouldn't have changed any of it for the world. But actually, having had to hit a really bad point where I struggled with postnatal depression, and really wasn't what's the word? I wasn't when you said about being a good mother earlier, I didn't even feel like I was a good mother. I thought I was just struggling my way through. And so to have come from that place to feel that actually I could end up empowering and helping other women makes me feel so proud. And I just want to do good.
I think that a lot of business people that I speak to, and it's not just business people, a lot of the time that the driver is to make people feel good or to make people happy. And it's quite interesting, I think, how we take those experiences of our own and want to, help somebody else either through them or to not experience them if that's possible. And I think that, with the experiences you've had, that really is going to resonate with some people. That's really going to resonate, with them thinking the same things or feeling. And it makes a huge difference to then being able to be open about it and to go, actually, I am struggling with this, or I am struggling. I'm trying to be a mother and I'm trying to be a businesswoman, or, not even necessarily being a parent, but just trying to have your life in some sort of balance.
Sure.
And being able to speak openly about that can be very freeing, I think. And so how do you juggle it now? Because you've got a husband, you've got, I think it's 2 children, you've got 2 businesses.
Hmm.
How do you stay sane? Are you sane, Jo?
I'm sure this is questionable. How do I stay sane? I must admit I'm not perfect, and actually I could really do with taking my own advice a little bit more. The advice that I offer clients to really find that some kind of balance, because actually we can't do it all. I don't believe we can do it all. That's my opinion. So I find balance by making sure that I make time for myself. I've overcome the feeling of selfishness, which so many women say, don't they? Oh, it's selfish to think about myself or to do something for me. Well, actually, I do believe that it's not selfish, and that actually that is self-care. It's taken me a while to get to that point. It's not, you don't just flick a switch and suddenly start looking after yourself. I'm having to find more boundaries. That's something, my theme this year actually in 2018 is boundaries and structure. And the boundaries are to make sure I don't let work take over normal life. And the structure means that I can get my work done within those boundaries and free myself up to be present for my family and my husband. And I think that we all need to make sure we get out and exercise. I make sure that I walk every day, even if I don't do any more than go for a power walk early in the morning. That's fine. If that's all I can do, that's great. But it means that I'm getting out in nature. I'm looking out into the window right now. Out into nature, come rain or shine. That's really good. So I don't think we need to do major things. I don't think we need to, it would be nice to have a spa break every week, but it's not something that I feel is a necessity. There are little things that I think we can build into our daily routine or our weekly routine that can help us find that balance.
And what about when you get the pressure of, somebody is maybe from, one of your clients, somebody is pushing because they need something, and they've got, an emergency for them. If that's pushing against your boundaries, how do you find, are you able to push back? Are you able to go, actually, no, I do have something else planned, and that is, as important, and therefore I can't sort this out for you? Or do you find yourself flexing?
I would say I used to flex a lot more, and I would find myself working into the early hours of the morning. And I got to a point where I realized that me offering this great service of alleviating others' stress should not actually end up making me ill, not their fault at all. So I discovered that quite early on. So actually, the way that I work with my clients is that I very much make sure I get the full picture before I take on a client, and we create boundaries at that point. And rather than, I'm not in a position where people will throw me work willy-nilly, and I just have to kind of deal with it. We will talk about things in projects, and we'll set deadlines, and I'll ensure that I have got the time to work to that deadline. So I think because a lot of my clients are business owning mums, they get it, and they realize how precious time is. And I've never really had anyone push it and demand something immediately at a time when I just couldn't make it happen. I think we have a good mutual understanding.
That's really great. And to have established that up front and to be clear about, what is expected on both sides can make a huge difference, can't it?
Absolutely.
So So, if you were talking to somebody else who was about to start up their own business, so either somebody who is, similar to yourself, returning to work after having children, or somebody who's just making that transition from, being in a corporate and wanting to start up their own business, are there any things that you feel that you've learned that you really would say to them, you make sure you take this into account or don't do this?
Great question. I have actually had this experience a few times recently. I would encourage them to come along to, or go along to, any kind of networking meeting early on, where they can be in a room where people can share the mistakes that they made. So someone starting their new business doesn't have to go through the stress or the time of making those mistakes. I think there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of things at the same time, trying to work out, how to do a website, how to, structure their time, all these things that we're all doing. We're all recreating the wheel again and again and again and again. So I would really encourage people coming out of corporate, or like you say, someone starting their business because they don't want to go back to work, to just really get talking to others first. I believe that people that are doing it are experts in helping others because they've been through it already. And I think time management is probably a very important one as well, because we don't have a boss telling us, go home, get back to your family. And we don't have a commute to have that sort of build up to our day and coming back down after our day. It's a very different experience. And I think to speak to others going through it, or who have gone through it, is the most valuable learning, actually.
And a lot of people that I speak to, the first thing that they're thinking, and I know this was true for me as well, is I don't like networking. I don't want to, be in that environment. It's something that is, whether it's scary, whatever your reasons are. And so they either put it off, or when they go, they don't really feel that they've got anything out of it. And do you have, I don't know if you, again, when I interviewed Anne the other day, she was saying that she puts on essentially a persona. She becomes confident Anne. And she consciously makes this decision before she goes in about how she's going to behave. And then partway through, it all just becomes natural. So she has a very conscious way of I guess, geeing herself up. Do you have any tips for, how to make it more comfortable and how to make it feel natural, as opposed to, here, buy me, here's my card, on to the next person?
I love this question because it's something that I really want to speak about, actually. I know that a lot of people do hear the word networking and want to run a mile in the opposite direction. And I completely understand that. When I went to my first ever networking event, my hands were shaking under the table. My heart felt like it was pumping across the other side of the room, and my palms were sweaty. And I wanted to do it despite all of that. And there was just a lot of apprehension, and would I remember what I wanted to say when I introduced myself, and what's everyone going to think of me? And there was a lot of self concern, shall we say. It wasn't self-doubt. I wasn't doubting myself, but I was concerned about it and anxious. And I would just like to say that every networking event is very different. Mine is my events at How Does She Do It are a fusion of all sorts of things. And if people come to my event and it's their first ever networking experience, I do encourage them, make sure you go to others as well, because this isn't necessarily a true representation of networking. This is just the way that I do it. And I know through testimonials that people that come to my events are not necessarily people that go to lots of networking events, and they've braved it to come along, and they felt very warmly welcomed. And I love what you said about Anne, getting her mindset absolutely in the right place. And I agree, you've got to tell yourself, be confident, it's all going to be fine. But I like to think that people can come into my event however nervous or anxious they are, or unsure about what they're doing, because they might not even have a business yet. And I love that they're going to be warmly welcomed, and there aren't going to be cards shoved in hands. Selling is not the main reason for my networking. I like people to come in to make relationships, build those relationships, support others, and therefore build that trust with people. And hey ho, it might be that what comes around is someone buying from you or using your products or services. That's kind of the icing on the cake at my events. And it's certainly not the sole reason people should come and feel that they have to promote this perfect business to people.
And it's very true. Well, a couple of points in there that I'll pick up on. So one is that all networking groups are different, and finding the ones that work for you are really important. And I remember there's one that I go to that's it's actually the Institute of Directors. It's a breakfast one, and I'm not good at mornings. And so I kind of dragged myself there on this first occasion. And then I was speaking to a business buddy afterwards who had also, we dragged ourselves there together. And we were both really dejected afterwards, because she said to me, well, what did you think? And I said, oh, I really liked it. And she said, yeah, I know. So did I. I have to go again.
Brilliant.
But it's a really nice group, and I think that's the thing, is putting yourself into some of those situations. You can be really surprised at what you find and whether you like it or not. And I was pretty determined I wasn't doing breakfast meetings, but I apparently now am. And yeah, and different groups do have a different feel. And I think for people to know that they can choose to walk away, that just because they went to one and didn't like it, as long as they're honest with themselves about, did I really not like it? Is it really not for me? Or am I just making an excuse because I was scared and lacking in confidence, and therefore I'm going, oh no, that wasn't for me. So I think being honest with yourself about it's then acceptable to go, no, that's not my style. I want this style. And I think yours are a little bit different as well. You have some extra things, which I don't think I've seen at any others. I think you said you invite somebody along for a little bit of therapy.
Absolutely. I believe, so how does she do it? Networking is child-friendly networking. So people can bring, so most people are mums.
Okay.
But not exclusively. I always say to people, I've had some people say, can you come along if you're not a mum? Absolutely, you can come along if you're not a mum, but sometimes we talk about mum things. But yeah, the reason for the pampering and the therapists coming in is because I believe that mums, women in general, don't necessarily give themselves a lot of me time. Constantly on the go, constantly doing whatever they need to do. So I bring in a therapist at every event that I run in Guildford, and free sessions are offered, whether it's hand massage, whether it's Reiki, head massage, and people can have a free complimentary pampering session. And seeing people come back into the group, if you like, once they've had their session, it's just fabulous. They grow wings. You can see they're lighter, their faces are glowing, they've got big old smile on their faces, because they've just given themselves a few minutes out. And I will never stop doing that. I think it's just really valuable. And the therapists actually that come in and offer their treatments do very well out of it. So rather than just standing there and saying what they do, they're able to show, actually do what they do. So they get clients out of it as well, which is great.
So if you're not somebody who does normally go for, therapy or pampering, you don't even necessarily know what it is. If somebody mentions Reiki and you've never been to Reiki, it is really easy to say, well, actually, that's not for me, and it can't possibly help. So having the little taster sessions as well, it's like, oh, okay, well, actually, there is something in that. So I can see how the therapist would also be gaining from it, as well as the individual who's participating.
It's a
Um,
it's a lovely two-way street, actually, and that's been a bonus for me. I set it up to give the mums pampering, but to hear the incredible positivity from the therapists is, again, icing on the cake.
but a very tasty icing.
Absolutely.
And I think those things about, you mentioned before about making sure that you did some exercise and you took time for yourself. And I think it is really easy to not do that. And it's something that I know I'm quite good at not doing. And
Mm.
I borrow a dog, and when I've got him, it does change, because one half the time he sat next to me, shoving his nose under my arm, going, "Excuse me, do you not realize you're meant to be stroking me?" But also, he needs to be taken out. He needs to go out. So it makes me have those little breaks. And I know that the days when I do go and I just go for a walk in the forest or something, and I just go and enjoy the peace and enjoy watching him run around like a lunatic,
Mm.
you just feel so much better afterwards.
Oh.
And yeah, it's so important, isn't it?
And isn't it interesting that you say, I know I need to take, I know the dog needs to go out. What we don't do ourselves is say, I'm a human being. Of course, I know I need to go out, because there's just so much distraction, so many things that need to be done as human beings. Whereas, the dog needs to eat, sleep, and run, and have lots of fun. So we could all learn, I think, a thing or two from our pets.
Well, it's as somebody said to me, dogs and animals, I think generally they live in the moment, and they just take that pleasure, so whatever they're feeling is there in the moment, and then they move on. And I remember a few years ago, I went down to West Wittering with some friends of mine, and they have this absolutely beautiful Hungarian Vizsla. And I was, I had a splitting headache. I really wasn't feeling very well. And it was just kind of like, okay, well, I do like being by the sea, so I'll go down. And I kind of managed their expectations that I just didn't know if I was going to stay very long. And I got down there, and, partially it's the fresh sea air and everything, but just watching Pasha run, and he was just so happy, and he hadn't been to this beach before. And I had these pictures of him looking at the foam coming off and tapping it with his foot, like, what is this thing? And he was running around in circles. And by the end of it, my head was gone. I felt way better, and yet I could so easily have just given in to going, oh no, I can't do that. But watching him be in the moment and enjoy it just gave me that release as well.
That's just it, isn't it? It's pure joy. And I think that we can be very good at blocking that joy for whatever reason. Life is busy, and yeah, it's very interesting, I think, to notice that it doesn't take very long to actually feel so much better.
Yes, and I did back at the last couple of weeks of January. I did something which I called a joyful min, and it started because I had been having. I'm going to hold this up for you. I'd been having problems with my keyboard,
Right.
and so I got this one delivered. And for some reason, this keyboard made me incredibly happy. It goes clackety clack when I type. And so the fact that the keyboard arrived and worked was a big plus on the fact that the old one was problematic. But the fact that it also went clackety clack just
Awesome.
made me smile. And I just thought, well, how silly is that? But I should embrace that. I should take that moment and acknowledge it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because those little things are the things that is so easy for us to miss.
Oh,
Um, and yeah, and just let them go by.
totally. I agree. And I feel that as someone that's juggling business and parenting and what have you, it's so easy to miss out on celebrating our wins. And our wins don't have to be big client deals at all. They are the little things, and they all add up. Like you said that about the keyboard, thank goodness I've got a keyboard that works. This is really, really good, because I could still be stressing about that keyboard that was driving me insane, but you're just on to the next thing, aren't you? So to pause and to reflect a little bit, I think, is pretty healthy as well.
Yeah, and it just gives you that happiness. And I know a few people that I've spoken to, or guests on the podcast, have actually all mentioned around the gratitude, and taking a few minutes to go, actually, yeah, I am really happy about that, or grateful for this, and that it just kind of keeps them, I guess, a little bit centered, which is, I found it really interesting to see that appearing as a theme, because it's not something I asked about. It's just something that has come out.
Oh, I'll add to your list then, yes, because I write my gratitude journal every morning. So yeah, you're obviously attracting all us grateful folk.
That's right. So, Joe, just before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to say to other business owners, other people considering going into business?
Oh, gosh, I need to find something insightful to say. I will say one. I will say one thing, and it's a quote, and it's one that I heard on the radio only about 2 or 3 years ago, by Henry Ford, and I'm sure you know it. But we've got to realize that whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I think that if we've got that faith in ourselves to put our mind to whatever we want to do, we can make it happen.
That's really wonderful. Thank you. And thank you very much for being on. It's been really great talking to you, Joe.
Thank you for having me, Deborah. It's been really lovely to speak.
You've been listening to Deborah Levitt on Bridging Gaps, the Business Podcast.